After entering a monster-filled palace, he took over her body, cursed her brother, and ended up building a special place for them. He gave her a medicine he made to fully possess her. Here, when Ray woke up after taking the medicine and lost consciousness, she said to Cloudan, "I think I'll learn to love this place." Cloudan put his hand on her face and said, "Of course you will." Then he looked at her and said, "Ray, I don't know much about love. Is it possible to divide your love into percentages?" Ray, "What do you mean?" Cloudan, "I gave 20% to Mary, 15% to Philip, 15% to the gardener, and 50% to me. I wonder if you can separate it this way." Ray smiled and said, "You can't divide your love in such a methodical way." "What prompted you to ask this question?" Cloudan, "Because I can't share you with others." And here, Cloudan held her hand, and Ray looked at him in astonishment and surprise when he put a ring on her finger. She looked at him and said, "Cloudan, this is—" Cloudan interrupted her and said, "It was my father's. You don't want to share me with anyone else either, do you? I know you want all my love for yourself, forever." He gave her the ring and said, "Then put it on." Ray did so, and Cloudan said, "You will give me everything of yours now, Ray." Ray smiled and said, "You can have it, and I can say the same about you." Cloudan said, "Yes." Then he kissed her hand, and Ray hugged him with all her love and said, "Of course I'm yours." The next day, in a new morning, Ray woke up and looked out the window and said to herself, "Is it morning already? I'm hungry. Why am I so hungry so early in the morning?" And here, Cloudan woke her up and said, "Ray, let's go downstairs. It's time for breakfast." When Cloudan took her down, Ray was shocked by the amount of food on the table. Cloudan said to her, "What's the matter, Ray? Please eat." Cloudan cut her a piece of food and fed her, saying, "You must be very hungry." And here Ray ate from it and finished the food, saying to herself, "I'm hungry, very hungry." Cloudan said to her, "Ray, would you like anything else?" But Ray, in shock and tension, said, "Cloudan, did I just eat all of that? There's no way. It's impossible, right?" But Cloudan smiled at her and said, "Absolutely." Ray said, "Right?" And Cloudan said, "Of course, it's perfectly normal. I would say so." And here Ray believed him and said, "Yes, anyone can eat as much as I just did. My parents did it, and Hayes did it." Cloudan looked at her and then held her, saying, "Don't you feel sleepy now, Ray?" He carried her, and she said, "I'm feeling a little dizzy. Am I just sleepy?" When she closed her eyes, he put his hand on her face and said, "You can't sleep anymore." Then he gave her the same medicine he had given her before, saying, "It's time for your medicine." Ray looked at him and said, "What kind of medicine is this?" Cloudan said, "It's something to help your health. Drink it." And here, Ray was feeling dizzy and out of it. Cloudan kept saying, "This is for us." So Ray drank it without hesitation, saying to herself, "This is for us." When Ray woke up, she looked at Cloudan and said to herself, "Cloudan, when did we fall asleep?" Then she got up and got dressed, saying, "I can't remember." Then she remembered the medicine she had taken and said, "I took a dose from Cloudan." Then she left the room and said to herself, "The longer I stay here, the more the days and nights blend together. I feel like Cloudan and I are the only two people who live here." Then she looked at herself and said, "I wonder how the others are doing. When is Lady Mary planning to arrive?" Suddenly she was shocked and said, "Why do I look so pale? I ate a lot the other day too. Somehow I lost weight. How—" And here she remembered when Cloudan gave her the medicine and said to her, "It's something to help your health." The scene changes to her eating, and Cloudan says to her, "Ray, do you want more?" Here, in shock, she says to herself, "More? Did I just eat all of that? Again?" And here she said to him, "No, Cloudan, I'd like to stop eating now." At the same time, she was saying to herself, "This is very strange. Cloudan says it's fine, But how can I eat enough food for a whole feast? Cloudan was looking at her. Then he went to her and said, Ray, what's going on in your mind? Ray said, Oh, I'm sorry. I think all this food has made me a little dizzy. Cloudan asked, Does anything hurt anywhere? Ray said, No. Cloudan then said to her, I see rapid progress. Ray said in surprise, Progress? But Cloudan picked her up and said, Nothing here. Let me take you to bed. He did so and put her on the bed. Then he took the medicine bottle and said to her, Ray, it's time for your medicine. And here she looked at him while he was saying, Cloudan, drink this. Then he went and changed his clothes. And here, when Ray took the bottle of medicine and was about to drink it, she was shocked when she heard a voice in her head saying to her, Don't do it. And here she looked at him in tension, saying to herself, This voice, who is it? Then she looked at Cloudan, saying to herself, Did Cloudan not hear that voice? And here the voice started to say to her, Hide the bottle. Hide it. Hide it now. Now. And Ray was shocked, but she did it. And when Cloudan finished changing his clothes, he looked at her and said, Are you done? And here Ray lied to him and said, Yes, Cloudan. And Cloudan kissed her on the head and said, You're a good girl. But strangely he said to her, Ray, I will never hurt you. And he held her face and said, You said you want to stay with me forever, right? And Ray leaned in and said, Of course, I'll always be with you. And Cloudan, do you mean that? Then he put her on the bed and she said, Yes, I mean it. But Cloudan did it while saying, Really? And he showed her the bottle of medicine she had hidden and said, Then you must drink it. And here Ray was shocked and he said, Didn't you want to drink it so much that you hid it from me? And Ray said, I didn't mean to deceive you, I just... And here Cloudan kissed her and said, You think too much. Then he looked at her and said, Don't you want to be closer to me? Someone you love? And Ray drank the bottle and said, I don't want to be close to Cloudan. Does that mean... His parents died shortly after. All this happened when Lord Cloudan was only 4 years old. He had taken on the role of Lord since childhood and showed many great talents. Every teacher he had did nothing but praise him, and everyone in the palace felt very proud of him. And here, when he went to him, Philip said to him, I was told that you refused to let the maid in again today. And he continued to tell him and said, But the older he got, the more strange and inexplicable behaviors he showed. He hated having anyone in his room except his nursemaid. And sometimes he would find a dessert he liked and eat only that dish every day for a month. Once, he wore the same clothes every day for 3 months in a row. It was clear that he had a strong tendency to obsess over the things he liked, and only recently did I realize that this obsession extends beyond material things. And here we return to the present, where Mary says to Philip, For God's sake, Philip, what's going on in your mind? Are you disgusted or something? And Philip says, I beg your pardon? And Mary says, About Lady Ray. Are you worried that Lord Cloudan is completely smitten with Lady Ray? And Philip says, The way I see it, Lady Ray is too soft, while the master is too... I have my suspicions about this sudden need to build an annex. And Mary says, You're repeating yourself, Philip, and I'm warning you now, don't interfere in this matter. What's the big deal about a young, single woman falling in love with our Lord? Then she started laughing and said to him, Isn't that what we've been hoping for all this time, Philip? For the master and Lady Ray to fall in love? Philip fell silent, and Mary left, saying, Don't make a fuss, Philip. I'm going to serve Lady Ray. And to himself, Philip thought, Maybe I'm really wrong. And Cloudan remembered thinking to himself, But the way he looked at me... No, it doesn't make sense. Mary said nothing. Then he smiled nervously, thinking to himself, I'm sure there won't be any problem. That seems a bit exaggerated. And when Cloudan had the annex built, he took Lady Mary, who was looking, and when she saw the yellow roses, she thought to herself, I know she's here because they're Lady Ray's favorite, but still. And suddenly she was startled when Claudine called out to her, "Yes, my lord?" And here Mary was shocked when she saw what Claudine had built. Claudine said to her, "What do you think? Do you think Ray will like it?" Mary smiled nervously and said to him, "Of course, Mr. Claudine. It's not every day you see a man build an entire annex for the women he loves." And in her mind she was saying, "And almost overnight, and using magic too." Then she said to him, "I know Lady Ray likes to keep things simple, but I still think she'll be very happy with this." And here Claudine went on, saying to her, "I had all the tiles cut from the same slabs of white marble so that it would be consistent throughout the house, and you'll also notice family jewels adorning different corners of the place." Mary: "Mr. Claudine, can I get the spare key from Philip?" But Claudine looked at her and said, "There is no spare key." And here Mary said, "I understand. Does that mean you intend to leave it open at all times?" But Claudine smiled and said, "I don't intend to keep it locked." Here Mary was shocked and felt tense, and she remembered Philip's words to her, saying to herself, "I thought it was strange when he suddenly announced that he wanted to build an annex." But what he was saying was, and here Claudine said to her, "Do you have any concerns?" Mary: "No, sir." And Claudine: "Then let's go outside." And before she did, she took a tense look around and said, "It's very beautiful." Then Claudine took Ray and placed his hand over her eyes. And here she said to him, "I can't see anything. Are you sure you're leading me the right way?" And Claudine said, "Yes, we're almost there." And Ray said, "Really?" And here they arrived, and Claudine said to her, "Yes, open your eyes." And Ray did so and saw the castle. And here she was stunned. And Claudine said to her, "I wanted to show you the colors of this garden." And here Ray turned to him, and Claudine said to her, "I love you, Ray. Do you love me too?" And here Ray went to him and hugged him, overjoyed, and said, "Of course I love you." Then she looked at him and said, "I love you more than anyone in the whole world." Then they went to the castle and did what they did. And here Ray said to him, "Darling," and Claudine was pleased with that, and said to her, "What are you calling me?" And Ray said to him, "My dear." And here Claudine kissed her. And when Ray said to him, "I love you," he took her hand and said, "I love you too." And the next day, on a bright morning when Ray woke up, and here Claudine said to her, "Are you awake?" And she said, "Claudine, what time is it?" And Claudine said, "The sun has just started to set. You should get some more rest." And Ray said, "It's okay. Lady Mary should be here soon." And here Claudine fell silent and said, "Actually, Ray, there was something I wanted to give you. Will you come with me?" And Ray went with him and looked back, thinking to herself, "I didn't see anyone else around. Strange, and it's so quiet." And Claudine went to his study and said to her, "Come here, Ray." And when Ray entered, she said to him in surprise, "Is this your study, Claudine? Why did you bring me here?" And here Claudine smiled and said to her, "Ray," and showed her a bottle of medicine and said to her, "Drink this." And Ray looked at him in astonishment and said to him, "Why?" And Claudine said, "Because I love you." And Ray said, "Is this for me?" And Claudine said, "Yes." She watched him silently, and without hesitation she drank it. But suddenly she lost consciousness, and Claudine carried her. And he opened a magical portal and took her there, saying to her, "Yes, Ray, I love you too." And so Ray fell into the clutches of the beast, never to return.